As promised, welcome to part 2 of my look at my 18mm Napoleonics collection. As I said in the last video, and if you haven't seen it, there's a link to it now above on the card. This is the French and French-Allied cavalry that I've collected in this scale. As I mentioned in the previous video, and I'll say again now, this was originally intended for the 1809 campaign, and sort of loosely continues along those lines since I've slightly resurrected the project, painting a couple of units at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, and represents all of the finished and based cavalry I have so far, although I have lots more, which I'll mention as I go along where the gaps are. So we'll move along left to right on this parade review of cavalry. So first of all, we've got the heavy cavalry on this side of the line here. So it's 4 units of French Cuirassiers with different facings, I think. Not all of them have got command groups. In fact, I know just one of them hasn't got a command group. So we've got 2 with red facings there, one with pink facings at the back there, and then one without a command group just on that side there. In front of them we've got a nice little division commander going along, and also a additional officer, potentially a brigade command figure or something else of that nature. I was going to say regimental command figure, but it wouldn't necessarily work like that in practice for any of the rule systems I've got, or perhaps just an additional aid. And then behind the French heavy cavalry, which are in 2 of the different AB poses, you'll notice that most of my cavalry are actually at rest. I kind of like that pose actually, but I did in the end go and get some of the more dynamically posed French Cuirassiers as well on this side, so they look like they're charging into the fray. And in common with that theme at the back, you've got some of my favourite cavalry of the period. So that's the Saxon Heavy Cavalry Brigade, in this case made up of the Garde du Corps on the left-hand side without any cuirasses, and then on the right-hand side the von Zastrow Cuirassier, looking fairly resplendent. Again, I think people are probably going to ask me what colours I use to paint these. If it's a question about the slightly buff, yellowy coloured Garde du Corps uniform jacket, I honestly can't remember the mix I used. It was all sorts of things. I think it was actually quite a lot of buff and khaki colours mixed together and progressively lightened with some yellow added in, and it just kind of seemed to work out to a shade that I quite liked for them and works quite nicely. So that is the heavy cavalry side of the army there, and for game purposes that could be one very large division there of 3 brigades, each made up of 2 regiments, and there you go, division commander at the front, and maybe a brigade commander, possibly do a couple more of those as well if they were required. Then moving on to this sort of wing of the parade, this is all the massed light cavalry. First of all, sneaking in at the front here, one of my favourite units to paint, and lots of people's favourite unit visually in terms of uniform. That is the Guard Chasseurs Cheval, looking resplendent in their slightly Christmas themed red and green. Very much enjoyed painting those, even down to the little tiny details and motifs and bits and pieces, and doing the leopard print on the officer's saddle. Even just about managed to get some enjoyment out of painting the grey horse for the trumpeter. Then behind them you've got 3 regiments of French light cavalry, so you've got 2 regiments there of Chasseurs Cheval, one in blue and one in yellow facings, and then next to them a regiment of Hussars. Now these were painted with specific regiments in mind, although in the case of the Chasseurs there's multiple regiments that might have had those facings, and I cannot for the life of me remember which Hussar regiment at the back there I actually intended those to represent, but they are in dark green with red trim. So points for anybody out there that perhaps can name whichever Hussar regiment that might have been in 1809. Then coming across we've got another little command diorama there, which I think, actually that's not the LaSalle figure maybe, I think it's maybe one of the more dramatic command figures for light cavalry, but quite dynamic, and I've just popped on a spare trumpeter there to accompany him on his base. And then finally at the back corner here we've got the Allied light cavalry and a couple of batteries of French horse artillery. So first in the dark green there at the front, that's the Württemberg Chevaulegers. Quite enjoyed painting those. Something quite smart about the uniforms and the sort of compact helmets that they've got on. even though I painted them some time ago, like the rest of the collection, much of this was painted at least a decade ago, I'd say, by this point. And then next to them, you've got the rather sort of smartly blue-attired Bavarian Chevaulegers at the back there. Or are they Bavarian, actually? No, I think they're Baden Chevaulegers, so cancel my last. And I know that because I have a contingent of Baden infantry from these sort of Allied infantry troops that were present at Aspern-Essling. So I think those are actually Baden Chevaulegers. But they're quite a nice sort of colour break amidst the sort of sea of dark greens and dark blues otherwise. They sort of stand out quite nicely among the contingent. And that, at a canter, pun intended, is all of the collection. And they look pretty smart actually out here. It's the first time I think I've ever got all of them out on the table all at once. I do have a lot more, as I say. I think I've got a brigade's worth of Dragoons, some more light cavalry. I've got a little bit more Allied cavalry as well, including some more Saxon cavalry, including Saxon light cavalry. The Dragoons, and then the rest of what would be the Guard cavalry division, so the Empress Dragoons, Gendarmes, and all the rest. I think I've even got one base of a pair of Mamelukes as well. But also, yeah, like the Chevaulegers, they do have lances, although I appreciate they probably didn't have lances in 1809 because those are the figures that are available. But yeah, I look forward to getting into those. I have to say, although I know I've taken a break of some months because life gets in the way, painting up the Guard light cavalry, the Chasseurs there, and doing the Saxons did reignite my enthusiasm for the range. As I said about the infantry, there's just such a pleasing size and level of detail in these sculpts, and I have amassed probably enough of them to go on painting them for some pretty while if I wanted to, without buying any more in boxes over the years. So yeah, I look forward to at some point getting through a couple more regiments, although I think I've probably got more than enough cavalry to go on. I probably have to get back to the infantry and guns. But yeah, that's all of the cavalry collection so far. I'll do a little quick final flyby of some of them, and I hope you've enjoyed having a look at these too. So next we'll move on to the Austrian cavalry in opposition and have a look through some of the regiments I've painted for those for the 1809 campaign, and then after that, once I've finished basing some of them, which is why they're not next, we'll look at the Austrian infantry units that I've got, less the Grenadiers, because I haven't finished reformatting their basing from the way they used to be for Empire. And once I do that, I'll also need to add some figures to them to fill their battalions out. Anyway, in the meantime, as I say, I hope you've enjoyed having a look at this collection of French and French Allied cavalry, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.